The day Julius Caesar was kidnapped by pirates. Did you know that the mighty Julius Caesar once sat among pirates who laughed and drank in front of him, while he plotted how he would one day crucify them all? It sounds like a tale from legend, yet it happened long before Rome knew his name. This story began when Caesar was not yet the ruler of empires, but a young Roman noble traveling across the Aegean Sea. The year was 75 BCE. The Mediterranean was wild and unguarded. Pirates ruled those blue waters like kings without crowns. They raided merchant ships. They captured travelers. They demanded gold from Rome itself. These pirates were not a small nuisance. They were a floating power. Their fast ships moved between islands faster than the Roman patrols could follow. And into this sea of danger sailed a man who would one day bring the Republic to its knees. Julius Caesar was then in his mid-20s. He was ambitious, sharp-minded, and already proud. He was traveling to Rhodes to study oratory under the great teacher Apollonius Molon. Caesar believed that a Roman leader needed to master the art of persuasion before he could command legions or control the Senate. Yet fate had other lessons for him on that journey. As Caesar's ship crossed near the island of Pharmacusa, a dark silhouette appeared on the horizon. Sleek ships with curved hulls glided out from behind the island, pirates of Cilicia, the terror of the Eastern Sea. They rowed with perfect rhythm as they surrounded Caesar's vessel. The crew panicked. There was nowhere to run. The pirates leapt aboard with swords flashing and faces hidden beneath cloth and salt-stained hair. Caesar did not fight. He watched with cold calm as the pirates seized his companions. He was a nobleman, and the pirates saw value in that. To them, he was not a soldier, not a threat, but a walking ransom. They demanded 20 talents of silver for his freedom. It was a large sum, but Caesar laughed. He looked the pirate chief in the eye and said they should ask for 50 instead. The pirates stared in confusion. No captive had ever raised his own ransom. Caesar's confidence was strange, but he meant every word. He told them he was worth far more than they thought. The pirates agreed to his demand, amused by the arrogance of their new prisoner. They sent his companions to collect the silver while Caesar remained on the island as a hostage. For 38 days, Julius Caesar lived among his captors. Yet he did not act like a prisoner. He ordered the pirates to stay quiet when he slept. He joined their games. He recited poetry and speeches to them. When they failed to applaud, he scolded them for lacking taste. He promised that when he was free, he would hunt them down and crucify every one of them. The pirates laughed. They thought he was joking, but Caesar was not joking. Every word he spoke came from a mind already plotting. As the pirates lounged in the sun, Caesar observed their ships. He counted their weapons. He learned their routes and habits. The island became his classroom. He studied the way they moved across the water, how they traded stolen goods, and how they feared no authority. Let's float over to a quiet evening under the Aegean sky. The sea was calm. Torches flickered along the shore. Caesar sat by the fire surrounded by men who believed he was powerless. Yet in his heart he had already begun to plan his revenge. The young Roman saw that power was not born from strength alone. It came from perception. These pirates ruled because Rome allowed them to. They were symptoms of the Republic's neglect. And one day Caesar would be the cure. When the ransom arrived, Caesar bid farewell to his captors as if leaving friends. He boarded a ship back to the coast of Asia Minor, his freedom restored. But his mind burned with purpose. He gathered a small fleet of men from local ports. He borrowed ships, called in favors, and offered rewards to sailors eager for pay. Within days, he returned to the sea, not as a prisoner, but as a hunter. The pirates were still anchored off Pharmacusa. They were celebrating their latest victory, unaware that their greatest mistake floated toward them. Caesar's ships appeared at dawn. The pirates had little time to react. Roman soldiers stormed the beaches. The men who once mocked him now ran for their lives. The same island that had been Caesar's prison became their trap. He captured them all, every one of them. The chief who had laughed the loudest now begged for mercy. Caesar listened, expressionless. He had already decided their fate. Yet he remembered his promise to the pirates when they had mocked his poetry and dreams. He had promised crucifixion. And in the world of Julius Caesar, a promise was not broken. Let's pause here on that island. The waves roll against the shore. The sun rises slowly over the Aegean. The young Roman, who had once been mocked by sea thieves, now stands before them as their judge. Yet this is only the beginning. Caesar's encounter with the pirates was not just an adventure. It was a mirror reflecting the chaos of Rome itself. It taught him the nature of power, mercy, and control. And the man who once commanded no army would soon learn how to command an empire. The vengeance of Julius Caesar. The sun had barely lifted above the Aegean when Julius Caesar ordered his ships to dock near the same shores where he had once been held prisoner. The island looked peaceful now. The pirates' laughter had faded. Their confidence had vanished. Bound in ropes, they sat in silence as Caesar paced the sand. The young Roman was no longer their captive. He was their conqueror. Caesar did not raise his voice. He gave calm instructions to his men. The pirates were taken inland, placed under guard, and made to await judgment. But even now, Caesar was not driven by rage. He acted with cold precision, the same way he would later command armies and reshape the Roman world. This was his first real lesson in authority. In those days, the law required captured pirates to be turned over to the governor of Asia, Marcus Junius. So Caesar sailed to Miletus to meet him. He informed the governor that he had taken the pirates alive and requested that justice be carried out swiftly. Yet the governor hesitated. He saw the pirates not as criminals but as opportunities for negotiation and profit. Many Roman officials grew rich through bribes and bargains with such men. Caesar saw this corruption and felt disgust. The young noble had risked his life to cleanse the sea of thieves. Now a Roman governor was about to let them live. It was in that moment Caesar understood something about the republic he served. Rome had laws, but few had the will to enforce them. Power belonged not to those who held office, but to those who acted. Without waiting for permission, Caesar returned to the island. He gathered his soldiers and ordered that the prisoners be executed exactly as he had once promised. The pirates were crucified along the coast where passing ships could see their fate. Yet even then, Caesar showed a strange kind of mercy. Before the execution, he ordered that each man's throat be cut so that they would not suffer the slow agony of the cross. It was a gesture both ruthless and humane. Caesar's message was clear: he would show mercy, but only on his own terms. The sea that had once carried him as a captive now carried his legend. Sailors spoke of a young Roman who laughed in the face of pirates, who promised vengeance and kept his word. His name began to travel through the ports of Asia Minor, whispered with both awe and fear. Let's float now to the port city of Rhodes, the place Caesar had been headed before his capture. There, surrounded by scholars and orators, he resumed his studies as if nothing had happened. But those weeks among pirates had changed him. He no longer saw the world as a place ruled by laws and titles. He saw it as a field of opportunity where boldness created its own order. Under Apollonius Molon, Caesar learned to master his voice. He practiced speeches until his words carried rhythm and fire. The teacher noticed something rare in his student. Caesar's style was not gentle like Cicero's. It was sharp and forceful, built for command. He spoke as one who expected obedience. And behind every word was the memory of the pirates' who had once laughed at him until he made them silent forever. In Rhodes, Caesar spent months perfecting the art of persuasion. Yet the eastern Mediterranean was never peaceful for long. Trouble was rising again in Asia Minor. A local king named Mithridates of Pontus had begun another revolt against Roman rule. The provinces trembled as armies gathered, and Caesar, restless as ever, could not remain a student while war raged nearby. He raised a small force of volunteers from local towns and Roman allies. With little official authority, he marched into the conflict. Caesar led his men with the same confidence he had shown among the pirates. He seized enemy positions. He rescued towns under siege. His actions drew the attention of commanders and governors alike. Even without formal command, he acted like a man destined for greatness. Let's drift for a moment to a Roman camp at dusk. Soldiers sit around the fire whispering stories about the young noble who had once been a hostage. They say he looked death in the face and laughed. They say he promised vengeance and delivered it. In an army filled with cautious politicians, Caesar's boldness felt different. It inspired men. It made them believe that courage alone could shape destiny. By the time Caesar returned to Rome, he carried more than the fame of his deeds. He carried a reputation. The Senate knew his name now. The people knew his face. He walked through the forum with the calm of someone who had seen his own mortality and conquered it. Rome was filled with men of status, yet few possessed true spirit. Caesar did. and the story of his capture and revenge became part of his growing myth. That episode, small as it seemed in the vast history of Rome, revealed everything about the man he would become. The pirates had tested him. They had forced him to show his true nature. He had learned to command respect not by rank but by will. He had learned that authority was something to be taken, not granted. And above all, he had learned that mercy was a weapon best used after victory was secure. Let's float ahead a few years to when Caesar entered the political stage. The same confidence that had made him raise his own ransom now drove him through the corridors of Roman power. He sought offices. He built alliances. He won the favor of the common people. The sea had given him his first stage, but Rome would be his theater. Still, that old fire from the Aegean never left him. Those days with the pirates remained a private symbol of how quickly fortune could turn, how easily a ruler could become a prisoner, and how swiftly a prisoner could rise again. As his career unfolded, every challenge that followed seemed to echo that early trial. When rivals mocked him, he remembered the pirates' laughter. When the Senate tried to restrain him, he remembered the ropes that once bound his hands. And when he finally stood at the Rubicon years later, ready to seize Rome itself, that same fearless spirit guided him once more. The lesson that shaped an empire. Let's return once more to the Aegean Sea. The waves roll endlessly against the same shores where Julius Caesar once stood. Time has washed away the footprints, yet the story remains, echoing through history like a lesson whispered to those who would lead. For in that strange encounter with pirates, Caesar learned the balance between boldness and patience, between mercy and control. Those lessons would follow him to the heart of Rome itself. Years passed, and the young man who once sailed as a student became a rising figure in Roman politics. He wore fine robes now and spoke in the Senate with calm authority. But behind the polished words and practiced gestures was the same man who had mocked his captors. His eyes carried the memory of the sea. He had seen what lawlessness looked like. He had seen what weakness invited. And he was determined that Rome would not share the same fate. The Republic at that time was rotting from within. Senators quarreled for power. Generals raised private armies. The people starved while the elite grew rich. Caesar watched the same corruption he had seen in the governor of Asia spread through every layer of Roman life. He knew what it meant to face men who laughed at the law. He knew that peace could only be built by those strong enough to enforce it. Let's float to a night in Rome when Caesar, now a young politician, stood beneath the stars overlooking the Forum. The marble columns glowed in torchlight. He listened to the noise of the city merchants calling, soldiers drinking, beggars pleading. Rome was powerful, yet fragile. He remembered the pirates who had once thought themselves untouchable. He had destroyed them not by rank but by will. And now, as he watched his city sink into chaos, he began to imagine how he might do the same again on a grander scale. His rise through the ranks was steady but relentless. He became a military commander, a governor, and then a hero of the Gallic Wars. But every decision carried echoes of that youthful captivity. When he led his legions across Gaul, he treated his soldiers not as tools but as companions, men he would sleep beside, eat beside, and lead from the front. The pirates had taught him how easily loyalty could shift when respect was lost. Caesar never forgot that. When he granted mercy to his enemies, he did so with calculation, not sentiment. He had once spared the pirates pain before death, not out of pity but to show control. In war and politics, he used mercy the same way, as a display of strength. To those who surrendered, he was generous. To those who mocked him, he was absolute. The sea had hardened his spirit, but it had also taught him composure. Let's drift now to a moment years later. When Caesar stood at the banks of the Rubicon River, behind him lay his command in Gaul. Ahead of him lay Rome, guarded by the Senate that ordered him to disband his army. It was a choice between obedience and destiny. He thought of how the pirates had underestimated him once. He remembered how hesitation had almost cost him freedom. Then, with quiet certainty, he crossed the river. History turned its gaze upon him from that moment onward. Many see the crossing of the Rubicon as the start of civil war. Yet in truth, the foundation of that boldness was laid long before on a forgotten island in the Aegean. That was the place where Caesar first realized that fortune favors those who act. It was there that he learned fear could be mastered, and authority could be created from nothing but conviction. After the wars and victories, when he finally became dictator of Rome, The same calm that once silenced pirates now ruled over senators. His commands were swift. His reforms reshaped the Republic into a new order. He forgave enemies, rebuilt cities, and extended citizenship across the lands he conquered. The same hand that had ordered crucifixion now built roads and temples. Yet deep within him, the pirate story remained a compass, a reminder of what power truly meant. Let's float now to the final days of his life. It is March of 44 BCE. Caesar walks through the marble halls of the Senate, surrounded by men who greet him with smiles and hide daggers beneath their togas. Among them are old allies turned fearful. They see him not as a leader, but as a king in disguise. Yet Caesar walks without guards. His calm is unshaken. Perhaps he remembers that day when he stood unarmed among pirates, surrounded by laughter and danger. He had faced worse than whispers. When the blades fell and his blood touched the stone floor, history circled back to that lesson once more. Even the most fearless cannot escape fate. But the mark he left was carved deep into the world. The pirates who once mocked a nameless Roman could never have imagined that their captive would one day give rise to an empire that lasted for centuries. Long after his death, the tale of his capture continued to be told by sailors, soldiers, and scholars. They spoke of a young noble who refused to fear those who held him hostage. They spoke of his strange laughter, his quiet revenge, and the promise he never broke. To many, it became more than a story. It became a symbol of how destiny often hides inside misfortune. Let's drift gently now away from the noise of Rome, back toward the calm sea where it all began. The island lies quiet. The waves carry no more pirates, only the whisper of the wind. Somewhere in that silence lives the echo of Caesar's voice, the voice of a man who learned that true command begins when fear ends. And so, the young captive of the Aegean became the ruler of the world. His revenge against pirates was not just a tale of vengeance. It was the first chapter in the making of an empire.